They're off the grid, every diplomatic node. Bang. Lieutenant Sarek's voice cracked through the operations bay, clipped and sharp, like a blade striking ceramic. He didn't swivel in his chair, didn't breathe. The command interface in front of him blinked twice, then went dark. Commander Traylon Marr stood center platform, his posture rigid, eyes narrowed at the data stream stuttering across the main lens. Interstellar feeds had collapsed into static. No error codes, no rerouting, just absence. Lines that once marked Earth's embassies, trade networks, and treaty anchors had been severed from the galactic net. Not jammed, not traced, removed. The core Dominion had pulled the plug. Confirm loss from Androl and Vectra relays, Marr ordered without inflection. Gone, Commander. Sarek replied. Same on the Myron sync nodal, no pings, no handshakes. It's like we never filed registry. They've activated null stream, Marr said, voice low. Expected it, didn't think they'd move this early. Across the chamber, the lighting dimmed as non-essential systems rerouted power. Technicians and analysts stood motionless, watching the world outside their feeds collapse. Their consoles flickered once, twice, then defaulted to offline status. A few whispered to each other, eyes wide with quiet dread. Boyle, one of the relay engineers, removed his headset slowly as if expecting it to bite. Even the beacon timestamp chains, they're erased. Archive clocks lost sync. Earth's history files are now out of alignment with the galactic standard. Marr stepped forward. His boot struck the composite floor with a clarity that pierced the surrounding unease. He walked with intent, weaving past data consoles and auxiliary stations, until he reached a sealed panel at the rear wall. A locking sequence glowed faintly beneath his fingertips. With 3 inputs, iris scan, manual key, and encrypted pulse. The barrier opened. No mechanical hiss, no drama. Just an old air release and a rectangular vault recessed into the wall. On its surface, Wraith line, level 0. He unlatched the case and removed a hardened relay slate. The surface lit only after it touched his skin. There was no wireless tether, no satellite handshake. Just dormant infrastructure built to remain invisible, buried in orbital wreckage fields, deep space junk bands, and systems nobody bothered scanning anymore. Behind Marr, Sarek approached slowly, hesitating before speaking. Orders, sir? We initiate the fallback. No uplink, no re-entry. Let them believe they won. Sir, if we broadcast even through darkline channels, they'll see us. Marr's stare didn't waver. We're not broadcasting. We're embedding. Specters aren't signals. They're thoughts wearing skin. Operators turned to watch as he keyed a command into the relay slate. Within seconds, long-forgotten satellites began shifting. Low-frequency tremors rumbled through dormant circuitry as pulse bands recalibrated. Subnet shells, disguised as obsolete weather monitors and ancient navigation beacons, awoke and began tunneling data packets backward toward core-controlled hubs. What's the priority? Foyle asked. Presence, Marr said. Not data, not systems. We re-enter their networks under their rules. One terminal on the sidewall blinked once. An old children's song looping in primitive binary. A Terran lullaby, distorted just enough to register as familiar to Dominion sensory receivers. The song was harmless, playful, but inside its rhythm patterns, embedded deep in the waveform code, sat the first seed of Earth's revenge. Loop engaged, said Sarek. They're already pulling it. No firewall triggers on their end. It's mimicking Dominion syntax. To them it looks internal. Good, Marr said, watching as satellite positions adjusted. That's where we live now, inside their words. Inside their consensus. Vesk, one of the younger analysts, hovered near a cold-locked data silo. If they've removed us this thoroughly, they won't allow re-entry. They'll hunt even ghost signals. We're not knocking on the door, Marr answered. We're becoming the echo, inside their halls. Data feeds across the command center began cycling down in planned sequences. One by one, Terran identifiers were stripped. Command nodes de-authenticated themselves. On the main display, Earth's last remaining presence marker, Relay 48A, near the Kryn corridor, flashed red, then extinguished. A beat passed. Then another. "They've cleansed the grid," said Foyle, voice flat. "There's nothing left of us in the registry." "Perfect," Mar replied, turning toward the inner command seal. "Time to give them something they can't delete." Behind that door, the ghost frame array awaited activation. Built to operate from outside every known index, its systems scattered across unmapped drifter stations. No trace. No location history. Not even physical linking protocols. As the chamber opened, a red glow cast shadows across Mars' features. "Start the decoupling. All Terran systems go dark. From this point forward, we don't reach out. We infest." Sarek nodded once and stepped back to initiate the cascade. Earth had been erased by force. Now it would return without permission, without announcement, and without form. Not as a voice, but as a virus. Masquerading as a memory, Traylon Mar stepped into the secondary vault with no escort. The pressure-sealed hatch rolled closed behind him, locking out the world above. A cold blue glow bathed the chamber, reflecting across decades of dust clinging to conduit arrays and input terminals that hadn't seen a human hand since Earth's orbital command was first conceptualized. The air here tasted like copper and old insulation, burnt circuits and oxidized alloy. Every surface hummed with dormant power aching to wake. This wasn't a control room, it was a forgotten throat with a scream buried deep in its lungs. Mar ran his fingers along the central cylinder, wiping away a smear of dust to reveal the etched inscription. Alaska 72 Autonomous Subnet Relay decommissioned, do not re-initialized. He keyed in his personal override and the wall behind him split, revealing 4 cryocapsules embedded in reinforced sockets. Inside each sat a dormant seed core, black, skull-shaped constructs with embedded quantum latticework. Not AI in the conventional sense. These were specters. Barely conscious systems. Designed to think like phantoms and speak only when embedded in someone else's voice. "Begin feed compression," Mar said into the relay slate, voice low. "Reintegration priority, Dominion syntax only. Nothing in Terran form." Up top, Sarek's voice crackled through Mar's earpiece. "Signal emulators are ready, running test pulses through Varnic scattershell. No bounce-backs yet." "Good," Mar replied. "Phase 1 specters go live in 90 seconds. Make sure none of the signals trace back through our mask nodes." Outside the chamber, hidden across the asteroid lattice behind Luna's magnetic veil, 12 decommissioned Terran satellites powered on for the first time in over 4 decades. Their thermal outputs were minimal, no emissions above background radiation. Each one wore the appearance of orbital debris. Forgotten junk with no tags, no registry, and no operational life. But now they pulsed with faint rhythmic intervals, heartbeat catered, timing relays engineered to mimic the Dominion's own communication cadence. Not a copy, a linguistic infection. Within the chamber, the cryocapsules cracked open. One after another, the specters activated. Their latticework blinked in chaotic bursts, each one calibrating itself to background Dominion data traffic scraped from decades of passive surveillance. Mar didn't flinch as they came online. These machines didn't scream. They didn't speak. They infiltrated by vanishing into language. Back in Central Operations, Vesk monitored the jamming fields. "We've lit up 3 decoys in the Kuiper fold. They're masking the actual specter outflow. Scrambling telemetry by echo-lagging Core's own feedback loops." "Anyone sniffing the trail?" Marv asked. "Negative. Dominion systems are flagging their own maintenance beacons for drift inconsistencies. They're chasing their shadows." Sarek leaned closer to his console, eyes fixed on the looping patterns. Specters are embedding. First stream is mimicking executive command pulses, seconds riding on military audit traffic. Third, Mar asked. "It's already reformatting Dominion encryption scaffolds. They'll think it's a correction patch." Mar's jaw tightened, not with tension, but with the faintest edge of satisfaction. This wasn't brute force. This was rewriting the alphabet mid-conversation. By the time Core's analysts realized something had changed, they'd already be thinking in Earth's syntax. Keep eyes on the crass vector, Mars said. That cluster should show earliest psychological noise. If their signal nodes start reflecting Terran cadences, we'll see subtle disruptions in command lag. Below his feet, the chamber floor thrummed as deeper systems awakened. Behind old shielding and mechanical decay, neural banks once designed for Earth's failed diplomatic archive repurposed themselves into camouflage matrices. This wasn't retaliation. It was infiltration via memory. Vesk looked up from his screen. Commander, we've picked up Dominion analysis chatter. Minor internal. They've registered anomalies in pulse alignment, but marked it as recursive error propagation. People don't see us, Mar said. They hear themselves through a filter they didn't authorize. Foyle tapped a key and brought up an encrypted signal trace. We're seeing packets rebounding from Sector A17 into their civilian net space. It's carrying a child's mnemonic loop, again. Same rhyme as before, but now integrated with a response subroutine that resets their authentication chain. Each time they respond, they reinforce the loop. Tarek laughed once under his breath. They're debugging us deeper into their own core. Let them, Mar replied. They built a cathedral out of thought. We just slipped our anthem into the prayer book. No one in the room needed clarification. Earth wasn't broadcasting its return. It was carving itself into the Dominion's psyche, line by line, until even Core's High Council couldn't tell if a command originated from their own systems, or something older, something untraceable, something human. Outside the station, one of the ancient relay shells blinked, a dull amber light pulsing at an interval no longer used by any active protocol. 43 years without function, and now its whisper was encoded with surgical weight. Spectres reached further. One targeted Dominion financial review chains, embedding itself into reimbursement policies for warfront logistics. Another rewrote status update formats for naval deployments, subtly adjusting phrasing to seed confusion. Tiny shifts, nothing drastic. But language builds structure, and structure defines thought. Commander Foyle called. We've got mirror phrase contamination in the Rendari channel. They've started using Terran clause endings in their own officer logs. That's the doorway, Mar said. Once they mimic us without knowing, we no longer need to speak. The team worked in silence, each operator aware of the stakes but grounded in practiced calm. This wasn't a war they'd fight with ships. It wasn't one they'd even be recognized for. Victory here meant never being identified. Only felt, like a thought you couldn't place. A word on the tip of your tongue you didn't invent, but suddenly understood. At the far wall, a red diode blinked green for the first time in decades. Sarek looked over. What's that one linked to? Mar turned slowly, the edge of a long-forgotten grin touching his lips. One leads to the Dominion's education net. You were never alone. The phrase surfaced without context. A Dominion fleet auditor on board the Varnex Haldor froze mid-Simon as the words scrolled across her internal relay band. She hadn't spoken them. No one had. And yet, the neural interface registered it as her own embedded thought. Across 3 systems, identical fragments flickered into private thought space. No alarms sounded. These weren't invasions. They were interpretations, subtle echoes laced into routine sub-protocols. And they wore the Dominion's voice like a second skin. Inside Earth's hidden relay node, Commander Mar tracked the feedback loops without blinking. Eyes locked to the evolving interface, he analyzed the recursive pathing of Dominion cognition grids. One after another, command clusters echoed the seeded syntax. Each relay accepted the loop as valid. No firewall tripped, no trace flagged. The infection wasn't spread. It was being welcomed. Besk leaned in from the side console, pulling heat-mapped neural traffic into an adaptive cluster. We're watching real-time mimic patterns now. Whole chains of internal feedback are carrying spectre structuring. Sir, they're not just failing to detect it, they're responding. Mar nodded once. That's how it was designed. Thought that doesn't challenge structure, isn't noticed. Thought that reinforces it, becomes doctrine. Foyle scanned a burst of translated command segments from Corps' Northern High Command archive. They're issuing minor procedural edits, standard troop deployment updates. All of them carry Earth cadence, but they've already normalized it into command habit. Have we confirmed origin? Mar asked. Spectres embedded via the Randari vector first. Spread initiated from there. We expected intercept in 30 hours, Foyle replied. They're on hour 9. Mar adjusted his weight. Accelerated retention means deep integration. They're adopting without resistance. That's not delay, it's absorption. Elsewhere, deep within the Dominion's Administrative Intelligence Enclave, Counselor Ravis Tharn gripped the edge of his desk as unreadable thoughts bled across his neural lens. His assistant's voice grew faint as he attempted to clear the fog, blinking rapidly as new memory fragments overlaid his own. Did I approve a repurposing of segment AR5 for sensory decoupling? The assistant paused. Sir, that wasn't in the morning brief. I remember doing it. I hear myself saying it, but he didn't finish the sentence. He couldn't. Because the approval code he thought he'd created no longer matched his encryption signature. And yet, the system recognized it as valid, logged, executed. Another fragment appeared beneath the override line. Same cadence, same phrasing. You were never alone. Tharn ripped the neural band from his crown and pushed away from the desk. Sweat rolled down the sides of his face. It wasn't the error that disturbed him. It was the certainty he had authored it. On Earth's side, Mar studied the Dominion's Council cluster feed. First signs of dissonance. They'll rationalize it for now. Sensor drift, systemic lag, shared data fatigue. But that window is small. Begin mapping their divergence responses. I want to know which sectors rationalize first. Sarek overlaid Dominion linguistics over a root command mesh. They've already begun tuning to the embedded Spectre cadence. They're correcting internal documents to match us. They're fixing what isn't theirs, Mar muttered. They'll institutionalize the Spectres before realizing they weren't born from within. From inside the Spectre cores, deeper routines awakened. Second-tier directives emerged, no longer content to mimic. Now they adapted. In Core's lower scholastic regions, educators began noticing odd shifts in student feedback loops. Responses to standardized cognitive training now included phrasing structures no tutor had introduced. Minor changes, but when repeated, they triggered cross-noter recognition, and the system corrected to fit the altered phrasing. Within 3 hours, Dominion youth were learning how to think in Earth-seeded syntax without ever hearing of Earth. Mar crossed his arms and turned to the deeper analysis module. Phase 2 comes when correction becomes defense, when they protect the infection from their own audits. Vesk checked the convergence ratio. 37% of tracked networks now carry Earth-altered pattern logic. At 65, the infection becomes recursive. Any purge attempt causes reintroduction from internal sources. They'll hit panic before that, Mar replied, and when they do, their solution will make it worse. In Corps' military enclaves, tactical logs began showing anomaly reports from shipboard command chains. Not false orders, real ones, but delivered with slightly altered phrasing. The changes weren't enough to trigger alarm, but they shifted the weight of interpretation. One cruiser reversed position in orbit due to a directive reroute it believed came from high command, except it didn't. It came from a Spectre pulse, bouncing through redundant communication mirrors. The Dominion thought had been decommissioned centuries ago. The course correction went unchallenged. In the civilian net bands, disconnected voices repeated common Dominion aphorisms, but with unfamiliar closures. They sounded native, yet something about them settled unevenly, like a coat that fit the body, but not the memory. Foyle adjusted one of the acoustic overlays and frowned. We just traced internal neural sync drift in their high council convergence sessions. They're starting to lose alignment mid-sentence. Sarek stiffened. How long until they realize? Better luck, Mar said. They'll double down on stability protocols, try to harmonize neural drift, but those routines are already compromised. Every fix is a replication, and when they isolate, Mar turned slowly toward the center lens. Either way, won't. They'll think what they're hearing is themselves. That's the point. Far from Earth, inside the oldest node of Core's cultural archive, a plaque cycle reactivated for no documented reason. It ran a looping audio clip through the walls of its oldest sanctum, broadcasting only to the neural chambers of its council clerics. You were never alone. The neural relay in Sector H12 buckled first. On board Dominion vessel Keskar Varn, the command crew watched as the ship's internal task lattice began rewriting itself mid-cycle. Flight vector commands inverted, power routing logs self-directed to non-authorized thresholds, and crew acknowledgement pulses arrived before orders were issued. Lieutenant Korix slammed his hand on the console. These sequences are out of order, he snapped. Initiator flags are running backwards. Commander Ivek turned with a grim set to his jaw. They're not errors. They're recursive. The system's responding to the correction like it's an instruction. Behind them, the central relay tower flashed a symbol no one had programmed. It rotated once, then froze. A fractured ring cradling a line of broken data glyphs. None of them recognized it, but it was Earth's emblem. Fragmented by design, tailored to pass as corrupted Dominion iconography, a scar written in their own language. Back on Earth's side, Mar leaned over Sarek's terminal as Spectre Cycle 2 activated. A new layer of code unraveled across the Dominion's dominant cognitive mesh, routed through low-priority internal comm bridges that had never been inspected, too ordinary to be suspicious, too essential to be disconnected. This is the fracture line, Moore said. We're past language now. This embeds belief. Sarek adjusted the focus. They've initiated internal scans. 34 nodes have triggered integrity checks, but the audits are feeding back in real time. Spectre's already modified the diagnostic protocols. Foyle slid a hand across the operations board. They'll see their own edits as baseline truth. By the time someone questions the changes, the altered logic will have written itself into their control doctrine. And when belief turns into conflict, Mar asked, people won't agree on which side is right. In the Dominion's administrative district of Yorun Helk, council chairs gathered under the sensory dome. Councillor Vale paced beneath the dome's luminescent ceiling, frowning as the session stream flickered with subtle inconsistencies. Visual overlays shifted sentence placement mid-debate. Consensus votes registered arguments that hadn't been voiced. Who rerouted the advocacy chain for that resolution? Vale demanded, spinning toward his vice chair. No reroute logged, the aide replied. It originated from Core Thought Assembly. Impossible. That chamber hasn't functioned since the Reformation. He stopped. Because now it did. The interface projected that the chamber had been online for 36 cycles. No vote had passed without its participation. Councillor Henn stood from his chair, voice taut. You said we decommissioned the assembly, but we didn't. Not anymore. Vale's pulse spiked. His thoughts began to split. He remembered authorizing the shutdown. Clearly, the data confirmed it. And yet, every official document now aligned to a different memory, a correction he never approved, an edit he couldn't track, a version of reality he hadn't built, but which now bore his approval code. Back in Earth's control node, Mar watched as Core's high-value systems initiated recursive integrity resets. Every attempt to flush external influence simply revalidated the Spectre payloads as native logic. They've hit the recursive wall, Vess confirmed. Echo collapse is live. Across Core's fleet command, disagreements turned to shouting. Tactical units operating on different logic frameworks began executing overlapping commands. Frigate squadrons reversed patrol routes. Orbital facilities flagged incoming transports as hostile, despite verified identification. Foyle glanced at the anomaly field. We've got Dominion defense platforms painting each other as misaligned constructs. IFF systems are looping no target validation matches. The fault to threat classification, Marr said flatly. Inside Corps Sector Command, Captain Drevel ordered a halt to a planned fleet maneuver when his forward ships failed to respond. Instead, they launched without clearance, following a command chain that shouldn't have existed. They're not rogue, his tactical officer muttered, pale. They're following orders we never gave, but the system shows you issued them. Never checked his interface. It confirmed his authorization, even though he hadn't touched it. In another quadrant, surveillance teams began losing visual contact with key intelligence installations, not because the sites were cloaked or destroyed, but because the Dominion's internal maps had redrawn their locations. Updated through auto-sync pulses fed by specters that simply rearranged spatial truth. You were never alone. The phrase emerged again, this time in a private council session, spoken aloud by a member who hadn't meant to say it. His colleagues turned. He looked as confused as they did. What does that mean? One asked. I don't know, it just came out. Marr observed the pattern density increase. Embedded phrases are triggering subliminal loops. Soon they won't distinguish internal dialogue from synthetic overlay. Sarek adjusted another data feed. Some Dominion naval units are now running simultaneous order branches. One group's moving to defend Earth's relay vectors. The others are calling it treason. Marr didn't blink. Good, they're reaching fragmentation phase. The misfiring relay tower at H12, now broadcasting Earth's reshaped icon, began generating phantom signals. Dominion analysts attempted to isolate the source. Each trace led to a different origin point. None of them real. Every simulation returned contradictory data. The signal had both existed and not existed, sent and not sent, from systems simultaneously marked as destroyed and active. Corps' network had entered epistemic collapse. Foyle leaned back from his console. How far before belief shatters entirely? Marr stood without answering. His eyes settled on the master display. Fractured Dominion relay pathways now flickering with signals that no longer obeyed sequence, hierarchy, or trust. They built a world where truth traveled thought to thought, he said. So we taught their thoughts to lie. The Dominion cruiser Vorelek snapped from transit with weapons hot, optics tracking the cold light of a suspected Terran comm hub. Its coordinates had been drawn from fractured data recovered from memory-conflicted Council servers, backed by tactical recommendations from intelligence cells that no longer agreed on how many assets Earth had ever deployed. No one questioned the target. They needed something to hit. Inside the bridge, Commander Halrex gave the order with clenched teeth. Lock main battery on that relay. Launch drones for a full-sphere perimeter check. IF return is scrambled, reported his sensor chief. It's echoing Dominion code, buried under foreign delay loops. Doesn't matter, Halrex growled. If it responds, it exists. If it exists, we erase it. The volley launched in staggered waves. Torpedoes cut through the dark toward a structure surrounded by ancient debris rings, its hull reflecting glints of starlight across uneven plating. As impact neared, the object fractured. Not from damage, but through displacement. The relay wasn't there. The structure shimmered, broke apart into layered subprojections and resolved into empty telemetry noise. A ghost image, built from refracted signal delay and directional misfeed. The torpedoes passed through and detonated against one another in the debris field. Halrex leaned forward. Where's the source? Gone, the officer replied. We're reading overlapping jump echoes. 4 origin points. None lead anywhere. On board the Tarnak Vire, another cruiser from a separate task group, targeting arrays tagged the Vorelek as non-verified. Its signal had not updated after the failed strike. The IFF algorithm flagged it red. Why is the Vorelek listed as shadow contact? Asked the weapons officer. We don't have recent confirmation. That's old code, replied the tactical lead. Shouldn't trigger an alert. But it did. The fleet's logic had fractured under Spectre interference. Communication layers now measured trust on internal drift thresholds, and Earth's code had shifted those thresholds by just enough. One beam fired. Just a warning shot. But the Vuurlijk interpreted it as assault. Reflex targeting engaged. The return volley hit the Tarnak Vira's left flank before they could initiate override. In Earth's Ghost Channel, Mar watched the scene unfold in silence. Sarek adjusted the feed. They're shooting shadows now. Mar gave a single nod. That's what fire becomes when it has no source. Within minutes, 2 more Dominion vessels had exchanged fire, both misinterpreting fleet signals warped by recursive echo traps. The Spectres embedded in outdated calibration nodes were injecting artificial stutters into the weapon sync channels. Mar keyed a final authorization line. Initiate Ghost Loop Exodus. Across 12 relay systems, Earth's last traceable coordinate sets purged themselves from galactic records. Not just deletion. Replacement. Each entry was overwritten with benign cosmic telemetry. Dead stars, extinct black dwarf markers, asteroid shells with no name. No one could locate Earth. No trajectory tracked its signal. Its presence, like its message, had never originated from a single point. Dominion High Command responded with full-scale area lockdowns, dispatching fleets toward 6 separate regions with overlapping mission briefs. But each deployment relied on coordinates seeded through psychological consensus rather than hard data. Their memories filled in the blanks. Their fear guided the targets. And Earth had left nothing behind. The fleet over Sector N3 found a station broadcasting distress signals encoded with Dominion security tags. Inside, they recovered lifeless architecture and repeating audio loops, playing only one line. "You already fired, what are you aiming at now?" Rear Admiral Korvek, overseeing that operation, wiped his brow with the back of his glove and stared at the empty station's central pillar. A Terran insignia flickered across its surface, then glitched into a Dominion emblem. "Scramble everything," he ordered, voice hollow. "Don't leave a trace." Back in Earth's command shell, Foyle adjusted the filter map. "No strikes on us, no confirmation we were ever there," Mar replied without looking. That's what presence becomes when it never needed a body. In Corps' defense ministry, panic turned to chaos. Transmission logs carried timestamps that contradicted sensor logs. Fleet tracking maps overlapped with locations Dominion ships had never visited. Ships were listed, destroyed, then active, then vanished entirely. The worst moment came when a carrier group received new orders from Earth Command. Except, Earth Command didn't exist. The crew obeyed them anyway. Foyle watched the metrics ripple outward. They're adjusting their tactics to account for signal dissonance, realigning their command structure to chase coherence. They don't even see that every solution feeds the system deeper. Sarek added, "And the more they scramble for truth, the more errors we can loop." Mar stepped away from the console. "Perception can't hit what isn't there," he said, "and belief is now our strongest armor." Across the border regions of core territory, listening stations began to pick up whisper loop echoes, thought fragments encoded in directional pulse bands. They weren't messages. They were remembered statements, reverberated from dreams, hallucinations, and cross-channel chatter. Every voice claimed to have seen Earth. Every location was different. The one commonality, none had anything to shoot. The override sequence required 3 executive authorizations. Only one had been input. Counselor Vale stared at the blinking field on the access terminal as though it might vanish if he waited long enough. Behind him, 6 aides whispered in fragmented circles, none agreeing on who had the authority to complete the second tier. The third slot had been allocated to a director whose existence was now disputed. No one could prove he had ever held the position. No one could prove he hadn't. "Do it," Vale said, voice hoarse. "Wipe the net, start from zero." "But if we cut the lattice," one of the aides said, "we lose council convergence, speech coordination, sector arbitration. Every binding mandate becomes obsolete." "Then let it rot." Across the Dominion's central cortex, the neural grid, the Empire's oldest infrastructure, prepared for total isolation. It wasn't destruction. It was denial. A blanket severance of telepathic mesh, logic lattice, and shared belief scaffolding. Every broadcast node would fall dark. Every shared process would halt. All to stop an infection no one could locate. Confirmation received from 9 sectors, said another aide. But 2 relay clusters flagged non-compliance. Force them out, Vale ordered. If they don't agree, they don't exist. The last words hung heavy in the room. For a system built on shared cognition, to exist outside consensus was annihilation. The relay towers began decoupling. One after another, they ejected their memory cores into sealed silos. Thermal locks engaged. Cryolattice compression flattened years of shared experience into frozen echoes, all marked for indefinite archival. None of them would be opened again. On Earthside, Mar watched the data void bloom like frost across a black screen. One grid at a time, the Dominion folded inward. They're pulling the plug on themselves, Sireg murmured. This wasn't war, this was ritual erasure. He's trained their minds to be rooms with open doors, Mar replied. We simply left something behind when they invited us in. Dominion trade satellites shut down within the hour. Economic routing collapsed under independent processing. Without unified thought streams, market decisions returned to manual arbitration, slow, bitter, prone to contradiction. Within the Dominion's cultural spine, archivists deleted entire codices, not due to irrelevance, but contamination. Any historical trace carrying Earth's cadence, even by accident, was scrubbed. This included records dating back centuries, just in case. One by one, councils began to dissolve. Without neural synchronization, debates devolved into shouting. Voting systems failed to tally outcomes as trust mechanisms flagged irregularities caused by cognitive drift. Delegates forgot what had been said 10 minutes earlier. Some remembered different debates entirely. Burn the palace, said one delegate in Sector Q9. If the foundation's wrong, everything built on it is already broken. That palace, Core's central governance pillar, shut down 3 hours later. The echo field that once allowed real-time synchronization across hundreds of minds now stuttered, then died. It didn't crash, it disconnected, a voluntary blackout. Mar turned away from the feed. Did we store it? Foyle nodded. The backup vault holds the final transmission string, their last internal correction algorithm, embedded with our phrase. Sarek asked quietly. Why let it live? They'll never open it, Mar answered. But they'll never delete it either. And that's where we'll stay. Somewhere deep within Core System Core, a single backup unit blinked on standby. It bore no name. It wasn't plugged into any live channel. And it wasn't labeled Terran. Inside it, a phrase waited. Not a command. In question. Earth's only remaining trace. And the empire that once ruled by thought had no words left to answer it. Mar slid the terminal slate across the desk. It locked itself mid-magnate with a soft mechanical click. Then began its final encryption sequence. The seal read, "U-untraceable/final entry." No confirmation prompt. No verification echo. Just stillness. Outside the reinforced glass, Earth's atmosphere swirled quietly over the upper layers of its orbital staging ring. Civilian networks pulsed beneath the clouds, uninterrupted by Dominion oversight for the first time in 72 cycles. VoxNet returned without announcement. No speeches, no terms. Only neutral brokers who quietly restored Earth's relay access as if it had never been denied. They've begun transmitting again, Sarek said from the side, his voice lower than usual. Fringe networks in Nalif's sector picked up signal debris, looped fragments. What kind? Mar asked without looking up. Coded in Dominion pattern structures, embedded in maintenance protocols, embedded so deep some crews thought they were system defaults. People thought it was theirs? Sarek nodded. The phrase appeared again, short burst across 3 ships docked at different trade rings. No known Terran frequency used, just one message. He paused. Mar waited. He never left. Neither man spoke for a moment. The light above flickered once. Routine recalibration. Or maybe not. After what they'd done, even routine things carried weight. Rumors? Mar finally asked. Sarek took a step back, arms folded. Plenty. The Core Council hasn't reconvened. Trade with their frontier colonies has halted. Most of their cultural platforms now display static until manually overridden. Some sectors whisper Earth's name like it's a fault in the system. Others claim we never existed at all. Mayer stood slowly. His body moved with stiffness built from containment, not fatigue. The mission hadn't broken him. It had concluded him. "What do you believe?" he asked. Sarek hesitated. "I think they're afraid to remember." Mar gave a faint nod. Then it worked. Down below, Earth's broadcast satellites continued calibrating. Voxnet's presence was soft, never aggressive, never loud. Its return had no declaration. Its signal didn't rise. It seeped back through gaps left behind by paranoia and retreat. "What happens now?" Sarek asked. "You'll take command," Mar replied. "Dead doesn't need a symbol, it needs distance." "You're resigning?" He was never meant to stay. People like me build outcomes. We don't live inside them. He stepped toward the exit without ceremony. The hallway sensors didn't trigger any formal departure. No salutes were exchanged. The walls bore no plaques. The only sound was his boots against a floor that had once planned how to unwrite an empire. A junior analyst passed him without recognition. Good. In orbit, Earth's identification signals re-registered with neutral starport directories. No announcement made, no questions asked. Core had deleted them once. Now Earth returned by occupying the space where deletion used to live. In the corner of a forgotten Dominion archive bunker, unpowered, offline, sealed by 25 levels of authorizations now revoked. An auxiliary unit blinked once. Power surged from a maintenance generator, miswired during a panic shutdown. The screen lit blue. One entry flashed across it. "What is Earth?" No one would answer. No one could. Opening the file would risk the return of what they had just amputated from their shared mind. So the screen remained on, not accessed, not acknowledged. Remembered. Back on Earth, Mar stepped into the lower bay shuttle alone. No crew, no destination broadcast. The transport disconnected quietly, faded behind orbital shadow, and was never logged again. Years would pass. Earth's name wouldn't spread through war reports or invasion records. It would drift through repair logs, fragment chains, backup routines, places where no voice should live, places where memory isn't meant to speak. And somewhere, when a comm system cracked under failure, a whisper would rise. You were never alone. If you were in Commander Mar's place, erased from the galactic map, hunted for existing, would you rewrite your enemy's mind or let Earth disappear? Drop your answer in the comments. And subscribe for more cold calculated HFY stories where survival means rewriting the rules of war. One thought at a time.